Alright, chapter 8.5 and 8.6 we're going to combine to one thing because there is a four-step process that works for both. So today is going to be the day that you kind of work on that process. Actually, today and tomorrow is going to be the day you work, how you work on the process. But again, there are four major steps that we need to know for today. The first step is to translate the expression we have into what we call a combination. The second step is to actually solve the combination. The third step is to take the numbers from the combination and create two fractions. And then the fourth step is to convert those fractions into factors. You should approach this lesson with patience. Focus mastering the lower step before worrying about the higher steps. For example, don't worry about creating the fractions until you know how to solve the combination. And don't worry about solving the combination until you properly know how to translate the expressions. Because otherwise what's going to happen is it gets very frustrating if you mess up on the lower step. So if you make a mistake on step one, you're going to have a very hard time getting through it, and you're probably not going to want to do the question. The other good news is that these four steps work for section 8.5, section 8.6, and section 8.7, and so therefore what you are learning is actually useful for the majority of this test that you're going to be taking next week. Translating an expression, the quadratic expressions, which are what we call the squared version, but quadratic expressions have the general format of ax squared plus bx plus c. In this format, we have to know that a is attached to x squared, that b is attached to the regular x, and that c is our constant. The format for translating is simple. You simply say that it multiplies to equal whatever a times c is, and that it adds to b whatever b is. Again, that's your format. The dot means multiply, so it multiplies to equal whatever a times c is, and it adds to b whatever the letter is for b. So study and practice that format until it becomes natural for you to translate, because again, any mistakes in this will mess you up for the whole thing. So here's what we're going to do. First off, we want to work on making sure we identify a, b, and c. And so in this problem, a would be 8, b is 9, and c is -3. So from there, when we go to make our combination, we want the numbers to multiply to be that times that. Again, 8 times -3, which is -24. And we want them to add to be whatever number is here, which is 9. That's all. So again, whether you want to draw the rainbow and then underline the middle, that works. Whatever you've got to do to make it natural, that's what you need to be ready for whenever you factor. B, in this situation, a is 5. B, we don't see a number, so that means that it's -1, and then C in this case is 2. And so when we go to make our combination, it multiplies to B this times that, which is a +10, because that's 5 times 2, and adds to make -1. Again, don't put -x. You need numbers in both of these spots. Make sure you understand that is a 1. That's why you want to be able to identify 5, -1, and 2 as your numbers. Alright. And then C, in this case, a is 1. B, if you recall, is attached to the x variable. There is no x variable, which means that B in this case is 0, and then C is 19. And so in this case, you would have multiplies to equal first times last, which in this case is 19, and adds to be 0. So again, that's part of what you're going to do. I know it feels weird, but again, use today, use tomorrow, use the whole week, and you even have 2 review days or 2 or 3 review days next week for your practice. Make sure you use those days to ask whatever questions you have to get used to it, because once you're used to it, you'll never not be used to it. It'll just become a natural thing for you to do. Once you've created the combination, now we have to solve it, but in order to do that, we have to combine your number sense, which hopefully you've been paying attention, with a basic calculator practice. The number sense portion, again, is just these 3 parts that, again, you probably want to highlight in your notes. In order to multiply to make a positive number, it means it's either positive times positive or negative times negative, because as we know, a positive times a positive is positive, and a negative times a negative is also positive. The second number sense thing you got to keep in mind is if it doesn't make a positive number, if it makes a negative number, then the signs must be opposite, so one must be positive and the other one must be negative. The last thing in terms of your plus part is that whenever you add 2 numbers, the larger number always gets the sign. And so whenever you add, for example, 6 plus 10, yes, it's +16, but it's because the 10 is positive. If you do 6 minus 4, yes, it's a +2 because the 6 is positive. if you do 4 minus 10, the answer is negative 6 because the bigger number is negative. So as we know, the bigger number always gets the sign. So again, that's your number sense part that you're going to need as we go to find these numbers for the combination. So what you will do once you have your combination is you will make a factor tree for this number. And yes, it will be boring and it will take time. But again, the better you are at this part, this is honestly the hardest part of all your work, because you have to find the numbers, the proper numbers, in order to get the right answer. So what I would do is I would take that number here, the 24, and I would start with the number 1. And I would say 1 times what makes 24, which of course is 24. And I would go to 2. And 2 times what makes 24, which is 12. And then 24 divided by 3. And again, this is pretty much just division. So 24 divided by 1 gave me my 24. 24 divided by 2 gave me my 12. 24 divided by 3 gives me an 8, which tells me that would be 3 times 8. 24 divided by 4 gives me a 6, so 4 times 6. Keep going. 24 divided by 5 is a decimal, which means that 5 does not work. And notice that 6 is the number I'm going to check, and it's already over here. So again, I checked 1, I checked 2, I checked 3, I checked 4. 5 did not work. 6 is already over here. This makes a closed list of factors. As soon as the answer is smaller than what you have, that means that you're done. So if I was to do 24 divided by 6 and get 4, there is no way I would want to put 6 and 4, because this should be the small side. So 6 and 4 should not be there. That is it. Alright, now here's where your number sense comes in. This tells me the signs must be the same. Why? Because it's a positive 24. This tells me a larger number must be negative, because this number is negative, which means I go to the larger side and I make it negative. Since the signs are the same, again, this tells me that the larger number has to be negative. And since the signs are the same, in order for it to be the same, if that had to be negative, then that means this has to be negative. And so now what you do is you look for the one that adds to make negative 10. Negative 1, negative 24 makes negative 25. Nope. Negative 2 and negative 12. If you're not good with numbers, you better type it in, because that is the tricky one that people will go for. Sorry, my calculator is just stupid. Negative 2, negative 12 actually makes negative 14, so you don't want that one. Negative 3 plus negative 8, nope, but negative 4 plus negative 6 actually gives me a negative 10, which means that would be the numbers I'm looking for. Negative 4 and negative 6. Alright, this is where all the hard work is. This is the reason why people don't like factoring. This is the reason why people who could like factoring don't get there, because they just don't ever work on getting used to this process. They try to take shortcuts. You're going to try to take shortcuts. It's going to hurt you. It's going to frustrate you. Just do it the right way. Take your time the first couple days until you get used to it, and then start to look for things that you can do. But like I said, I don't think you'll do as many shortcuts as it is that you'll just get faster at getting to the number. This one here, again, you want numbers that multiply to be negative 30, so what I'm going to do is just put the 30, because I really don't care about the negative part. That'll be 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10. Again, notice I don't need the calculator for everything, because some of these numbers you know. 4 I don't think goes into 30, but I can check by doing the division. You don't want to miss anything here. This is important. It does not. 5 times 6, and notice that before I go to check 6, it's already over here. I don't want to put a 6 times 5, because this should be my big side. That should be my small side. This tells me a sign should be different, because the only way you multiply to be a negative is if you have a negative and a positive. This tells me that my big side needs to be positive, because the larger number has to be that number there. And so if the larger side is positive and the signs are different, that means that this has to be negative. And so now you ask yourself, which one of these makes 7? So negative 1 and 30, definitely not. Negative 2 and 15, I think, makes 13. If you don't know, just type it in. Nope. Negative 3 and 10, I think, might be it, though. And there you go. There's my 7, which means that this is it. Now, what you will find, especially if you're good with numbers, is once you get to that set, you can actually check it out for yourself before you finish the whole thing and actually see if it works. But again, that's part of what you will do after you get used to it. I would not do it before that point. And yes, you will see big numbers. Numbers go up to about 200, but you just have to be patient. This one here multiplies to be negative 96, adds to be negative 4. So we will take our 96 and simply go through our part. 1 is easy. 1 times 96. 2 means cut it in half, but if you don't know, just do 96 divided by 2, which is 48. Again, we will continue to go. 96 divided by 3, which is 32. 96 divided by 4, which is 24. 96 divided by 5, I don't really need to check because if it's divisible by 5, it should end in a 5 or a 0. 96 divided by 6 sounds like it would work. Yep, 6 times 16. Remember, we just keep going until our answer is smaller than what we type in. 96 divided by 7. Nope. 96 divided by 8. Yep, 8 times 12. 96 divided by 9 I don't think will work. 96 divided by 10. Notice that our answer is smaller than what we typed in. Again, you got to keep an eye out for that, which means that this is a closed set of answers here. Again, this tells me because it's negative that the signs are different, and this means that my larger number is negative. So I want to go to my large side and put negatives all the way down this list. And then I want to use this fact that they are different to make sure that these are all positive. Now I've got to find the ones that make 4. Well, typically whenever the signs are different, we subtract. So you're looking for the ones that subtract to make 4. I don't think any of those do it. These are 4 apart. And so that would actually be it. So 8 plus negative 12 should be your negative 4, which it is. And we've now found the numbers. This is the majority of your work. Again, this is the part where you're going to have most of your frustration today and tomorrow. But just keep in mind that the next 2 steps are extremely easy. And so as you try to fight your way through solving the combinations, just remember that once you learn how to solve the combinations, the rest of it is easy and very easy and very, very easy. So don't worry about falling behind. Just focus on learning each step, and then once you master the step, you'll get better and better at it. Creating the fractions, this step again is simple, but you must understand how to reduce fractions in order to execute it properly. It's easier to show than explain, so again, let's look at some examples here. This is a quadratic 3x squared plus 11x plus 8, which we obviously see multiplies and make 24, adds to be 11. You would then go through the work to find out that the numbers at work are 3 and 8, and here's what you do. You take just this part, not the squared, and you put that value over both of these, so 3x over 3 and 3x over 8. And then what you do is you divide, so 3 over 3 turns into 1, which means that it divides, but you cannot answer without having a number on the bottom, so that pretty much means that it's just going to be x over 1. 3x over 8, let's see what 3 over 8 reduces to be, which it seems to be 3/8, so that's just going to be 3x over 8. That is what we're looking for here. So again, you take this part here, put it on the top of both of those numbers we just found, and then we make sure we reduce both of those fractions as far as we can, and then stop. Again, that is how you create the fractions. Again, this day and tomorrow is going to be your 2 days to try to get this, so make sure you work hard. B, here's your initial part. Of course, you can see 12 times negative 3 gives me 36. It should add to be 5. We find out after some work that the numbers are negative 4 and 9, and so what we do is we take the 12x and we put it over negative 4, and then we take the 12x and we put it over 9. From there we reduce our fractions, so 12 over 4 is just 3. What that means again is that the bottom number is gone, but you must keep the bottom number, which means we turn into 3x over negative 1, because again, if that 4 is negative, you want to make sure it's still negative. Now, your computer will let you get away with putting the negative on the front, but make sure that you understand you need to keep the negative on the bottom of the fraction. 12 over 9, again, reduce that fraction by typing it into your calculator. Ends up being 4 over 3, so you turn that into 4x over 3. That is our finished version of fractions. Alright. And then this one here, 1 times negative 12 makes 12. That obviously adds to make negative 1. These are my 2 numbers. You take just this part, not the squared, so you put x over 3 and you put x over negative 4. Now the good news about this, there's no number on top, which means if it's just a x, but that's already reduced. Again, you will see how all this comes together in the end, but do not worry about seeing that just yet until you master each individual step. Good news, converting into fractions is the easiest of all the steps. Once you've safely found your fractions, the key word being safely, that means you didn't mess up on step 1, you did not mess up on step 2, and you safely reduced your fractions into the proper part. All we have to do now is convert it into a proper form for our answer, and that'll be it. So, if we ended up with 3x over 7 and 3x minus 2, we simply take this and put 3x plus 7 and 3x minus 2. That would be our final answer. Notice that looks just like the problems that we were multiplying last time around, and that is what we need it to look like. Alright, because this is the one where we take 3x times 3x, but this is where we stop. Here, if we had x over negative 5, x over negative 3, it turns into x minus 5 and x minus 3. That's it. Here, if we have 2x over negative 1, 2x over 1, this turns into 2x minus 1 and 2x plus 1. Hopefully now you can see why you need to keep the negative on the bottom, because if it's in front, you don't know where to put it. Again, the negative on the bottom stays because you need it for the sign on the actual bottom number. Now again, go to your Math Excel and work as hard as you can. I don't care if you have to repeat the same questions even though you got them right, just to make sure you get better at it. And let the more disciplined you are on the first 2 steps, because as you see, these 2 steps don't take a lot of work, but the better you are with those 2, the better you're going to be in the end. So again, if you're trying to do well on this test, make sure you understand that, again, this is where your work is going to be. Translating and solving the combination is really where all the work is. So other than that, go to Math Excel and go ahead and get started. Good luck.